after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here?
I love meditation for a while, and it never really heard too much about Buddhism.
Yeah.
So just here to check it out.
Nice. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. I might be biased, but I think this is an all right place. So. What else?
This is actually my second time, but I've never been here on this day. But
I should always clarify that question, huh?
I don't know. For the most part, just expanding my experience because the first one was good. So
Nice.
taking it up again.
Well, welcome back. Glad you're here. What else? Who's here for the first time? What brings
Curiosity.
you here? Curiosity.
Yeah, I have no idea of anything about Buddhism, so
Yeah,
I
great.
want to learn.
I don't either, so we're in it together. We're good. What else? First time here? Anybody? Yeah.
Just a major drinking problem, trying to kind of get with the program.
Yeah. That craving is tough, right? Yeah. What else? Anybody want to share why they're here? Yeah.
I'm looking for peace with like-minded people. I haven't found this in San Diego yet, and I keep coming back here.
And so looking around this room, you think these people's minds are like yours? Because I know a lot of these people, you don't want their mind. And I leave this class and you don't want my mind. But, oh, go ahead.
No. I mean, it may be closer than anything else I can find.
Yes, I don't want to shatter your hopes and dreams, but the beauty of, spaces like this, wherever you are, is that the way I like to present it is that the minds in this room are all a mess and completely different. No offense to anyone's mind who's not a mess, but what's similar is the intention.
Yeah.
And that's really what creates a safe space, is that intention to find peace within ourselves and a mind that's a little steadier, calmer, more gentle. So, well, glad you're here. Welcome. Anybody else want to share?
I'll share this.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Swedenborg in his teachings, and the fact that he's considered the Buddha
Yeah.
of our faith, and I'm a person of that particular following.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. For those who didn't share it, and I'll just touch on this briefly because it's kind of it's a 97-year story, but the 60-second version is this building was built in 1927 by the Swedenborgian congregation. Emanuel Swedenborg was a Christian mystic in the 1700s, and in the 20s, their San Diego group came together and decided to build this place. They were going to tear it down in 2016. They never deemed it historic, so we came in at the end of 16, and then April of 2017 closed on it and kept it. So here it is, but it would have become condos. But one of the coolest things, and for you as there's not too many around anymore, but people who, at least here, that people who practice and look at the teachings of Emanuel Swedenborg. When we were looking at getting this old church, I was like, Swedenborg, what do they do? You know, we went into a lot of old churches, a lot of old buildings, and some of those buildings feel really cool when you walk in, and some of them not so much. And that has nothing to do necessarily with the religion, just the feeling of the space. And so I did like 20 minutes of Google searching on, all right, Emanuel Swedenborg, Christian mystic, you know, I'm a Jewish kid, what did they do? And I found that D.T. Suzuki, who was a Japanese Zen priest and scholar, wrote a lot of books. He wrote a book titled Swedenborg Buddha of the North. And it was really fascinating because what D.T. Suzuki was saying in the 20s and 30s was, hey, all you Western folks that are interested in Buddhism, all you'd have to do is read the teachings of Emanuel Swedenborg. And there were a lot of parallels. And did you know Jonathan, who was the reverend here before we took over, he was a member of the Japanese Buddhist temple downtown. So for me, it was really cool to kind of, as we were going after acquiring this cool old church, to know that there were a lot of parallels between the Christian mystic Swedenborgian teachings and Buddhist practice. So that's the extent of my Swedenborgian knowledge. So we'll stop there. But yeah, it's kind of cool. So it's always good to have a few that were, you know, still practicing in that faith in that space, just to kind of keep this here.
Oh, we have our regular chapel not too far away.
Beautiful.
So.
Nice. Wonderful. We're glad you're here. All right, so we're going to start with the meditation practice. And to those who are joining us virtually, glad you're here. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen, as you can see. Feel free to say hello, chime in. Yeah, so meditation practice, a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. So if you are sitting on a cushion or often help slide to the front third, pushing the stomach forward, relaxing the shoulders. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, same thing, relaxing the shoulders, hands are on the knees or in the lap. Does help to just kind of sit yourself upright a little bit, trying to break the routine of your normal sitting and sleeping posture. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost lost in thought. Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. Slowly open the eyes. Slowly beginning to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us. He began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And very often in our lives, the present moment is incredibly difficult, painful, challenging. And so this practice is learning to be with each present moment as it arises. And not doing what we've done so much of our lives, which is try to escape. Run from it. Turn to something that's usually unhealthy. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's it. It's simply becoming aware of your own karma, meaning action. Karma is not what goes around comes around. Karma is not getting what you or anyone deserves. Karma is what you think, what you say, and what you do. Karma is what you bring into the world. And so in this practice, we talk about being mindful of our karma. And very often people confuse that with thinking, well, what do I get from my karma? Or what do they get from their karma? Welcome to Buddhism in America. That's not what karma is. Karma is what you give. So be mindful of what you give with your thoughts, with your words, and with your actions. That's what we're focused on. And in the process of being aware of what you think and what you say and what you do, and working on them coming from a place of loving kindness and compassion, generosity, morality. Coming from this place, that will drastically change your life and the life of those around you. If the intention is pure. Doesn't mean we are pure, but the intention is. And that's the effort. And that's why it's a practice. Because we can always be kinder, gentler, more forgiving, more loving towards ourselves and others. There's always work to be done. And that's why this, Buddhist stuff is not a 6-week course. It's not something you do for 3 months and get some certificate or level that says you've accomplished anything. The beauty of Buddhist practice is there's nothing to accomplish, so it makes it even easier.
Yeah.
It's just a practice and a way of life. And once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. We spend so much time focused on the thoughts, words, and actions of other people and how that impacts us. And this practice is removing that and focusing on how we respond to what's going on around us. So with that, I'll pause. And for me, I really just prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening and I'll respond to your thoughts or your questions. And to those of you who are joining virtually, again, welcome, glad you're here. As you are, feel free to say hello in the chat box there. If you have any questions, you can put them there and I'll do my best to respond as well. So we'll open up to questions.
I just wanted to say thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for what?
The sense of silence and the direction and the wisdom.
Buddha was a smart dude,
Yeah, he seems straightforward.
right? Wouldn't it have been cool to know him? Like just some really smart dude. Like how fun would that have been, I think it would have been. I think about it a lot, like what would it have been like to just know some really smart dudes who could just tell you when you're being an idiot. With kindness, of course. Yeah. So, well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. What else? Thoughts, questions? Yes, sir.
Who was the Buddha?
Who was the Buddha? So the 2-minute version, right? And because very often those who might be brand new to Buddhist practice think that the Buddha was like some big belly dude floating in the sky. Because that's what, kind of this image that we may see. And again, welcome to American Buddhism. But that was actually the historical journey of Buddhism. And I'll come back to your question in a second. As Buddhism went from country to country, the first thing that went into each country was the image of the Buddha. And this actually started along the Silk Road when the traders, not like traders, but merchants, would go through Mongolia. They brought monks with them for protection. And they would carry little amulets, little charms, little images of the Buddha. And so ever since the very early days, the Buddhism always spread first through the image. And in this wonderful country that we're in, somehow we ended up with his name is Hotai, the happy Buddha, they call him, right? You've seen the big belly dude, you see him at casinos, right? Nail salons. You rub the belly for good luck, don't rub the head, that's bad luck, right? Just so you know. So that's what we've all seen from the beginning. And so that's, in my opinion, part of the reason why I think people look at this image and they think like Buddha was some god in the sky and we're going to throw money at him at the casino and we're going to win big and he's going to bless us with, winning the 777s or whatever. And I hate to break it to you, but it's kind of like finding out Santa Claus isn't real. That was a monk in China 1,000 years ago. His name was Hotai. The name Hotai literally means bag carrier. And he was always happy, had a big belly, always jolly, carried a big bag of stuff, gave out lots of gifts. Sound familiar? And so somehow that ended up being the first Buddha that we see, predominantly the image. But to the question was, who was the Buddha? The Buddha was a prince. Here's the 2-minute version of that. He was born 2,500 years ago 500 years before Christ. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. And he was born, father was a king, born in the palace, raised just completely all the wealth, all the riches, all the women, everything you can imagine. This is India 2,500 years ago. And it said when he was born that he would either be a great king or a very wise, like sage, you know? And so the father wanted him to be a king, of course. So they sheltered him, like in a bubble, never let him see old age, sickness, death, anything that would cause pain and suffering to him as a child. They removed it. It said that when he was a kid, he was like shooting arrows or rocks, like slingshot style with friends at birds. He was maybe 10 years old, and a bird fell to the ground, and that was one of the early moments that they recognized the compassion that he had as a boy, because he had this tremendous, like, visceral reaction and just pain to seeing the bird that they had just harmed. So anyways, fast forward, 29 years old, he sneaks out in the middle of the night, and he sees over 4 different times, but he sees old age, sickness, and death, and an ascetic, kind of like a wise nun or monk, living a simple life in India at the time. And he went to his buddy Chana, and he said, what is this old age, sickness, death stuff? Does this happen to all of us? Because he'd never seen it. And Chana said, yes, my Lord, it happens to us all. So he said, I'm out of here. How can I live in a life of wealth and riches when there's a world out there that's suffering? So left in the middle of the night, 6 years, he roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains. And at the age of 35, he sat down in Bodh India under a tree. You can see it today. It's called the Bodhi tree. And he understood at that moment, over a 21-day period, that the nature of all suffering comes from our minds. I'll get to that in a minute. And so 35 years old, he has what they call the awakening, right? It's said that at that moment, he didn't think anybody would understand his teachings, so he didn't want to go anywhere. He just sat there. And the story is that Brahma, because this is India, Hindu gods, right? Goddesses, endless gods and goddesses. The story is that Brahma came down and told Siddhartha, there are people with little dust in their eyes. Go teach. So he got up, he started to teach. And there's an image on the, tough to see from there, but on your way out, you can see above the exit sign right there, on the way out, there's an image of the Buddha sitting with 5 disciples and deers and people around him. And that was the first teaching at Deer Park, where he taught the 4 noble truths. Life is suffering. There's a cause, which is greed, anger, ignorance, is the second noble truth. The third is the ending of suffering. And the 4th is the path that leads to suffering, right? It's called the Eightfold Path. So those 5 guys saw him and they said, there's Siddhartha, let's sit with him. He looks like he's figured something out. He taught them what he realized. They said, you have awakened, we will call you the Buddha. Buddha was just a word that means awakened one. So then for 45 years, he roams around India. At 80, he died. That was the Buddha. Yeah. Very smart dude. And then Buddhism leaves, 100, 200 years later, goes south, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, and then turn of the century goes up north, China, Japan, Korea, and you have, Northern Asia Buddhism, Mahayana tradition. And then 1,000 years after he died, roughly goes into Tibet. You have the development of what they call Vajrayana Buddhism. So you have these 3 major schools of Buddhism that have really developed over the last 2,500 years. So, does that help? Yeah. Thank you. Yes, in the back. Oh, no.
He died. When his father died, did the Buddha take over the kingdom, or who sat in for him as the heir?
It wasn't him. I don't know actually who took over, but there's lots of Buddhist scholars out there that study all that stuff. I am not one of them, right? But I know that when he came back, which he did shortly thereafter, right? He returned, and so his mother, you probably know this, you've heard me say, his mother died about a week after he was born. So his aunt, his mother's sister, raised him, and they all became disciples of the Buddha. And I'm not sure exactly from like a ruling the kingdom type thing, what happened after that. I'm not even sure when his father died. So But I'll Google it and get back to you next Tuesday.
Well, I'm wondering what his
Yeah.
perspective. Okay, my father's dead. I gotta go take over the kingdom, but I'll be a good king.
Yeah. That I would tend to think he had similar thoughts to whatever happened, but I got a week to do some Google searching and I'll come back to you. So, 17 years, nobody's asked that question. That's why we keep you around. Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
What's your greatest life lesson from the Buddha?
My greatest life lesson from the Buddha,
Or in general?
in general. No, I'll give you a greatest one that I'm sitting with right now at this moment, and then when you ask the same question next week, I'll give you a different one. The greatest life lesson that I have learned from this path and this practice is that nothing at all is what it seems to be. Nothing. Everything that I see is only coming from my unenlightened, ignorant view. Doesn't mean I don't still see it that way. Doesn't mean I'm still not going to be stuck or attached on certain views. But in every single view I have, I truly, truly believe that I'm not correct. It's just my view. And with every single view I have, every single moment I'm awake or every single moment I'm asleep, there is a million other people that have a different view. And they're just as welcome to have those views. That to me has been a life change. Like, I can't even begin to explain how much that's changed my life. To understand, especially for somebody who grew up, arguing and fighting for everything, against everyone, and trying to prove I was right. You know how liberating it is to no longer feel like you have to be right because you just roam around knowing that you're not? It saves me so much time and energy. Yeah, thanks. What else? Questions?
Another question.
Yeah.
How was yoga started?
How was yoga started? That's beyond my, I couldn't tell you how it started. I know that it was, at the time of the Buddha, it was a big part of their life, as the Buddha was Hindu, so he was raised, right, in the Hindu yogi tradition and practice. So he was a yogi. That was part of their journey. Even during those 6 years that he was roaming around, they actually were just roaming ascetics and yogis, and they would do crazy yogi poses and stand on one leg for like 3 months at a time or hang from a tree for like 2 months at a time. They were really stressing the physical body, because at that time the Hindu practice and belief with yoga as well was that, hang on, you can totally hang on one second, was that you could overcome, if you could overcome the physical body, that was the way to enlightenment. But the history of yoga, I couldn't. But I'm sure there's a yogi somewhere in the room who can tell you the history of yoga. Where are you gonna?
No.
Oh, you were like right in, like you were gonna solve that for me. So I gotta Google something else. Come on, go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, what in the terms of the Buddha, what is enlightenment?
Sure. I don't know. Yeah. So enlightenment, in the terms of the Buddha, is the first thing, anytime anyone asks about enlightenment, right, awakening, things like that, there was a time where the Buddha asked Subhuti, one of his disciples, to give a teaching on Prajnaparamita, which is the perfection of wisdom. And Subhuti sat down to give this discourse on wisdom, ultimate wisdom, supreme ultimate wisdom, as they say. And he said absolutely nothing. And the Buddha said, good job, right? So enlightenment is, by definition, if you look at the fundamental core Buddhist teachings, as I refer to the Four Noble Truths, first one, life is filled with dukkha, suffering. Doesn't mean all of life sucks. Doesn't mean that everything is dramatic or traumatic. It just means that throughout your day, you're going to have tremendous discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. We experience tremendous pain, loss, death, trauma, extreme suffering. We also experience having a sandwich made the way we don't like it, your Starbucks not having enough pumps of whatever you want in it, and the person on the freeway not doing exactly what you want in every moment. This is also dukkha. This is suffering, right? The second noble truth is the cause, as I mentioned earlier, and this is greed, anger, and ignorance. This is called the three poisons. So the practice of overcoming greed, anger, and ignorance is generosity to overcome greed, compassion to overcome anger, and wisdom to overcome ignorance. So the path to enlightenment is to practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom in every single moment. Right? There was somebody just on Saturday, there's a very famous kind of Buddhist expression that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Meaning, like, enlightenment isn't this thing that like ding, right? And then you're like, ah. Like in some video game where you have some bubble around you. You know, when you're enlightened, you die just the same as unenlightened people, right? But what it actually is, I don't know. For me as a practitioner, I never focus on enlightenment. I think goals in Buddhism are very dangerous. Setting kind of expectations of like, am I going to get enlightened by next Thursday? Right? No. But can I be a kinder, gentler person? Less greedy, less angry, less ignorant tomorrow than I am today. To me, it's always a practice of bringing more generosity, compassion, and wisdom into every single moment of your life. And then you'll die. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, please.
I was just thinking, can it mean that you're at peace with yourself?
No.
No. No. Okay.
Sorry to shatter your, you know. See, often, and I love it because you're like brand new, right? Like day one. And so what you're, I don't know you, what's your name? Sorry.
Leanne.
Leanne, I don't know you at all, so I don't want to go as far as to say, I was about to say what you're trying to do, and I shouldn't do that because I have no idea what you're trying to do. But my perception of what you're trying to do is contradictory to exactly what I was just saying, is that you want to define enlightenment based on what you just said. And what I'm suggesting is not trying to put some concrete definition around enlightenment. It doesn't mean being at peace isn't a beautiful thing. It doesn't mean being at peace isn't something, going back to earlier comment, that we're all working towards. But being at peace, well, yeah, I could use myself. I'm at peace. I am far from enlightened. So being at peace, good thing, but not equal to enlightenment. I'm at peace and I could still do stupid things. Yeah. Which maybe means I'm not really at peace. Yeah.
So I recognize that I have a lot of cravings all day, every day for all sorts of different things. And I know that I will never get rid of those, really. So what would be the first step towards living with those?
Yeah. So just to paraphrase the question for anybody maybe didn't hear, you said you recognize that you have cravings you live with every day. In your words, you said something to the effect of, you also recognize those are never going away. And your question is, what is the first step in living with cravings that you believe are never going to go away, right? Okay. First, just as an example, anyone in here have cravings every day, all day? Okay, if anyone's hand is not up, they're lying to you, right? The first step is actually, and this isn't even the first step, you've already done many first steps. What I was going to say is the first step is actually asking that question. That's the next step. The next step is truly, and what's your name, sorry?
Angel.
Angel. Truly and honestly looking, which it sounds like you are, I'm just guessing the way you asked that question, like, hey, these are my cravings. And honestly looking at what they are. And then beginning to explore why they're there. Now,
I mean, for me, I can tell you.
oh, I don't want to know. Keep it. I don't like details because, the less I know about people, the easier it is for me. But go ahead.
For me, it's connection. It's sort of that like wound, right? Of caregiver, love,
Sure.
isolation, all of those sorts of things.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
Sorry, everybody, overshare.
No, that was great. A lot better than I thought it was gonna be. Here's what I would throw back to you, Angel, just as something to think about, right? Is what really struck me in the way you asked it was that you seem pretty convinced that your cravings are never gonna go away. And what I'm gonna suggest,
Ease up, but yeah,
say again?
I think they could ease up.
Okay, so that's progress from how you asked the question, though, is my point. The way you asked the question was like, hey, these cravings are never going away.
It is very all or nothing, correct?
Yeah. So the practice with looking at what Buddha taught is to understand what is the nature, and this is more of a rhetorical question, not to respond right now, but what is the nature of the craving? And if you begin to understand impermanence, as the Buddha taught it, the teachings of non-self, meaning that you are not anything that you perceive yourself to be, and also understanding that the entire world is different from how you perceive it to be, it is very quite possible that your cravings, as you said, ease up at times, could continue to ease up to where many of them are potentially just a tiny little pilot light and not a wildfire.
True.
So it's not so much, I wouldn't give some ideas, because I don't think that that's a healthy practice necessarily, of setting some benchmark of like, these are my strong desires, they're always going to be there, how can I live with them? To me, the practice would be, well, how can I continue to possibly minimize some of these desires? And that's by understanding the nature of them, the impermanence of them, your attachment to yourself and your views and your experiences. Because you can work through those. That's what this practice is. To where these cravings, they do go away.
Seems so hard.
Oh, I never in anything I just said it was easy. It is incredibly difficult. It is incredibly difficult. Absolutely. But so is suffering. Suffering is awful. It sucks. So that's why I caution, this isn't just me, this is for everybody, to recognize that it is possible, truly, and probably not nearly as difficult as you think. Like day one, maybe with all this stuff, yeah, it seems like, lifetimes away. But 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, your life will drastically change if you begin to make small adjustments. I will actually respond to how do you live with that, because I do think, even though I don't think that's the ultimate practice, but in fairness to your question of how do you live with these cravings, carefully. Meaning, see them for what they are, right? Just like serve them up on a plate. Here's my 5 cravings, because we all only have 5, of course. Here's my 5 cravings. Just see them. With the practice of meditation, what we're training our mind to do, again, meditation is not escape. We're training our mind to recognize our thoughts as they arise, release them, and come back to present moment. Does that make sense in theory? So what is a craving? Ultimately, it's a what? It's a thought. So while you sat here for 20 minutes, Angel, doing your meditation, you had like a million thoughts, as did all of us. What did you do with those thoughts?
Just let them go.
Let them go or not, but what did you physically do?
Oh, I guess I thought about my breath. Was that the answer?
Sure, that's not a wrong answer. My point is, whatever you thought, you didn't get up and run out and do anything.
I stayed.
You stayed.
I sat.
You sat. So this is what meditation practice is. It's training our mind to see a million thoughts and be with them.
Sit.
Just sit. Cutting through cravings. Thoughts arise during the day. There's a craving. Just come back to the breath and sit with it. Believe it or not, folks, we do not have to act on every single craving that comes up. I know that seems like completely impossible for so many people,
Right.
but we don't have to. So there's 2 approaches. I'm going to go here.
I just finished your engaged Buddhist training course for the last 8 weeks, which went by so fast.
Yeah.
Don't be sorry.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things, because there were a few things, but one of the biggest things that I am now able to live, that I learned,
Mm-hmm.
is that not every thought has to become a feeling, nor does it have to become an action.
Right.
And that was something that somebody else in class
Mm-hmm.
said
Mm-hmm.
that made a lot of sense. And it goes right back to just, especially things that trigger you,
Yeah.
make you feel an emotion, whether it's good or bad, either way. Not everything has to become something else in your life. It can just be a thought.
Yeah, so for those who didn't hear what Meredith said, the heart of it is not every thought has to become a feeling, which then has to become an action. They can just stay thoughts. And that's rare for most of us, because we feel like these thoughts have to become something. And that's because we think they're real. We don't see the illusion of our thoughts, meaning that they're just like airplanes flying over our head all day long, back and forth, just flying around. It's like a helicopter stuck above our head. They're just thoughts. We don't have to jump on the plane and ride with it.
Most of us don't even recognize them as thoughts until they're already a feeling and sometimes already an action.
Mm-hmm.
We don't. And when you stop and you back up and you catch yourself when it's just a thought and you just sit there with it and don't let it go anywhere else because you just let it go,
Mm-hmm.
it's huge.
Do you hear that, Angel? That should have been my response. Yeah.
Very succinct.
Go here. Yeah, go ahead. Question? No? Yeah?
Oh, no,
Oh.
I was having a physical reaction to that thought.
Oh,
Just, that is blowing my mind a little bit.
yeah. The smart people here. Yeah, go ahead and then we'll go here. Yeah.
How deep does the illusion go?
How deep does the illusion go? There is no illusion to go anywhere. That's how deep it goes. I used to smoke a lot of pot and read Buddhist stuff. And then I stopped. Yeah.
So my response to the comment is how. How do we fight the urge to
Yes.
respond?
Yeah, great question.
That is the hardest thing.
Yeah. So I'll kind of close with this thought. The question is, and I appreciate you brought it back to that. How? How do you stop that, right? Do you have the ability to walk? Yeah. How? How did you learn that? Did you just like, when you were born, what's your name? Sorry.
Ted.
Ted. When you were born, did you just like, yo, what's up? I'm Ted, and start cruising around? Practice. What did you do before you could walk? Crawl. What did you do before you could crawl?
Carry.
Just carried. Yeah, we're just like laying there, and all of a sudden we're like, whoa, look, they turned over. Yay. Right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, they can stand up. We're holding on to the table. Well, there they go. And then they take like 3 steps and they topple over. And then one day it's like, yay, they're walking and they're running, It's practice. I wish I could say like, red pill, blue pill, here's the pill and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
No, I wish I could say turn to page 26 and you're done. No, it's training. I could give it anything you've ever trained for anything, right, in your life, whether it's, to run a marathon or, for school or educate, whatever it might be. Training's a lot of work, right? Yeah. It takes a lot of time and effort and diligence. One of the Buddhist greatest teachings is on diligence, right? Effort. We have to see the practice. We don't have to do anything. The practice is to see, and I'll close with this thought, to see the suffering that we are experiencing, the suffering that leads us to crazy places like this, right? Exploring our own search for inner peace, which is beautiful, by the way. I'm not shattering inner peace, But searching for that means we're struggling, we're suffering. Something's not right. That's the dukkha. And we have to, the practice is to reach a point where we're like, I don't want to suffer anymore. I mean, I spent 30 years of my life angry, depressed, and miserable. I was like, this sucks. Had everything in the world, but was miserable. It's like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So when that suffering becomes so extreme, then the effort, the diligence matches that. And with that effort and with that diligence, we begin to train the mind. Not to go to places like this to escape from the madness at home. I mean, it starts out that way for many people, it stays that way for many people, and it always is that way for many people. But understand that if you're always escaping from the madness wherever you are, then what are you going to spend your whole life doing? Trying to escape from the madness. This practice is being in the madness and recognizing there is no madness. There's just your mind. The training of the mind to meditate is the way we do this. And it's not getting lost in La La Land and pretending we're sailing down a river, looking at all the birds and like, life is grand. No, life is rough, right? Practice of meditation, breath in, breath out. Thought arises, recognize it. Back to breath. This is what I'm working on. Breath in, breath out. Thought arises, recognize it. Let it go, back to breath. That's what I want to do. This is the training. Thought arises, there's a craving. Recognize it, release it, back to the breath. Thought arises, there's just some neutral, random thought. Recognize it, release it, back to the breath. That's what I'm training to do. What I don't want to do, thought arises, hunger. I'm hungry. What am I going to eat? I want a burrito. I'm going to go to Pokies. I want chips, I want cheese, I want sauce, right? One single thought of hunger, now the craving, now I'm eating a burrito in my head, and now I'm hungrier than I was. Because in my head, I'm like satisfying my craving. And all I'm doing is feeding my craving, and I haven't gone anywhere. Learn to stay present, train the mind. Stare at a shoe, stare at a bottle of water, stare at a candle, and just sit. That's how. And that's why it takes time. So for those of you who came here tonight thinking it was going to be like, one and done and like, boom, give it at least 3 weeks, and then you'll be all right. So, all right, I'm going to close on that. There's a question here. There's a question here that says, can you give a little info on the Dharma Bum Temple? Yes, I will do that at the end, or John will do that at the end. And also, if this is an introductory session, what comes next? What comes next is the next introductory session. So we'll join palms and as we close, the transfer of merit. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to Molly during her suffering and her mother during her pain. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So before you head out, we do have a couple quick announcements from our Dharma Bum host, John. And then when he's done, I had 2 just updates on class schedule, but go ahead. Thanks, John.
Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, John. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well. Hope to see you all again.
Thanks, John. And just a quick schedule update. So our Wednesday nights, we're now week 3 into Bettina, who's doing a new weekly class on the 4 Brahma Viharas and the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And our Thursday night class is continued really the same in a way, but back to the original format, which is sitting in a circle and just sharing. I filled in for the first 2 weeks, and now it'll go back to some other folks. So we'll have Olivia leading this week, who's been incredible for 8 years, probably started many years ago with our college group, and has been leading groups for the last 6 years, probably. So she'll be leading this Thursday night, which would be phenomenal, and we're just really grateful to have her here and lead. And also, we will, the end of the month, be starting a new Sunday, 3 o'clock, I think, 3 to 5 o'clock. It'll be a 2-hour sit with an hour and a half sitting, and then a 30-minute study of the Heart Sutra. The hour and a half sitting isn't an hour and a half straight through. There'll be 5-minute breaks, but that'll be Sundays from 3 to 5. And also our residential retreat program will start August 11th. So if anybody wants to live in the crazy Dharma Bum Temple for a week, just go to the website, click on residential retreats, and all the info is there. So thanks all for being here. Be well. Walker, hopefully that helped.
Yeah.